Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. If you're not using the Bet Rivers app, you're missing out. Download it today or go to betrivers.com. You see Zac Jackson with me from The Athletic. He just got back from the Senior Bowl. We'll talk about that, but obviously we got to start with the Browns hiring a coach, Zach, and just the whole process. We were talking a little bit about it off the air. In the end, maybe Todd Monken's not a bad choice, but how they got there just makes them look dysfunctional as always.
Yeah, I think it's an anticlimactic ending, right? And one of the reasons is it just drug out so long when it was clear that there wasn't like a mystery candidate or anything like that. And the other one is then it's Todd Monken. He's older. He's never been a head coach. He was here, and it was a bad year. That he doesn't get any of the blame for that. But I think people had set their minds to, okay, if they're going to make this change, they're going to make a splash. And if they can't make the splash, they're just going to hire Jim Schwartz and rely on what everybody knows, and including their own, actions say that they have this defense. That's all that they've built. That's the identity 6 years in, right? So, I think you're right. I think if you take a step back and say, okay, this was we let the emotions run off. This was a fine hire. His track record says he's good. It just really comes down to this. Whether you're fired up on the positive side or fired up on the negative side, or however you rank some of the next things to go, none of us think that Andrew Berry's doing a good job.
That is correct.
But Jimmy Haslam thinks Andrew Berry's doing a good job. And that, to me, is the disconnect, right? And so how that paints the picture of Todd Monken, or the job that Todd Monken has to do, or the impossibility of the job that it seems Todd Monken has to do. I think that is the biggest thing here, Bull, sitting here right now, just at the very beginning of a whole lot of work that needs to be done.
There's a lot of leaps being made by fans that part of the reason Todd Monken was hired is because he really likes Shedeur Sanders. Listen, I've said for a while now, I don't know that there's anybody out there they're going to get that's necessarily going to be better than Shedeur Sanders. And I'd rather just stick with him rather than take somebody else that's unproven, I guess, at this point. But I think it's a big leap to say, oh, that's why they brought him in. I don't think the quarterbacks on the team currently have anything to do with it. Do you?
Yeah, it's not just a big leap. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the reality is that Shedeur is first in line for the Browns and is, as he has been, the most direct way out of this thing. Yeah. And I think when you do take a step back and look, and people are tired of using the word process, the Ravens wanted to draft Shedeur Sanders. And I would just tell you from all of my years here, each team does things differently. But when you want to draft a kicker or a punter, your special teams coach guides that. And when you want to draft a backup quarterback, your offensive coordinator and your quarterback coach are really involved with that. Okay. So, to what extent, to how it went, obviously the Ravens were never thinking this is the guy that's going to win us a Super Bowl, right? But there was some there. Then they coached against him, right? I think the familiarity with Todd Monken is part of the reason that he's here. So when you look at it, at what Todd Monken has done in his career, who he's coached, different offenses, and how his best ones have thrown the ball down the field, there's a lot of natural fits here, right? And there is something to get excited about. And it's Albert Breer reported it, and it's no surprise. You would talk about Shedeur just like any coaching interview for any of the 32 teams would talk about their quarterback room, guys 1, 2, and 3, right? Shedeur obviously carries a different meaning to some people, and obviously to this Browns, regardless of what you think about what Shedeur has done. He's a developmental quarterback. He's the only one worth developing on your roster. And he did play 7 games in which he showed some good. I think there's a real ceiling on what good he showed, but he showed some good. So, so Shedeur matters. Todd Monken's development matters. And going forward, looking at Shedeur fairly as a developmental quarterback, he's got a lot of work to do in April and May and June. The Browns have to make decisions before that on other guys. But yeah, I think if you want to get excited about Shedeur's development and about, to me, the really small window or really small chance that he is the hit that some people want him to be, then Todd Monken is a fit for going on that path. And let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it came down to for them between, like, clearly the young guys didn't want this job. I think that's pretty obvious. But
sure,
right, maybe in the end it just came down to Monken over Schwartz because they wanted an offensive guy.
Yeah, I think thinking back to what you said about, cooling off or getting away from it. Yeah, they wanted an offensive guy. And if you look at the process, they interviewed the young guys. Dan Pitcher, first coaching interview. Grant Udinski, first coaching interview. Shieldhouse ended up interviewing with 4 or 5 teams, but he had never done this before because he's only coached in the NFL for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. He's never been a coordinator. So they did the process. Right. And there was, of course, McDaniel told him no, and Udinski told him no. Eventually, probably when he knew he wasn't getting it, quite frankly.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Shieldhouse, I think, to an extent, wanted the job, but I also think he was really worried about ownership's thoughts on things, which was keeping Jim Schwartz around or keeping some other things around. So it's going to go that way. The process, with the exception of having to scramble for the Rooney Rule, I think was mostly fine. And if you want to quibble with hiring a 60-year-old first-time head coach, you should. You're welcome to do that, and I do to an extent. I just think mostly it's the overall feeling of hopelessness here.
Right.
And it's the overall lack of trust that the fan base and those of us who observe the team have in the owner and the GM, more than it's, oh my gosh, Todd Monken's a disaster. Todd Monken might be a disaster. This might be a disaster. Todd Monken could be a good coach, and this could be a disaster. He's going to have to be a great coach, Bull, for us to say with any level of confidence, this won't be a disaster and it might be good. It might be, but he's going to have to be really good.
Yeah, there's not that many coaches like. Even the best coaches in football, how much could they do with this current offensive roster, right? Like,
it's a hell of a fair question.
Yeah.
And it's the question we keep asking. And I keep coming back to process here. Yeah. Everything I've written or said to you on this show or another one or said on my own podcast comes back. As soon as we start talking, it's like, well, what are you going to do with Jerry Jeudy as your number 1 receiver?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with no offensive line? Like, I want some answers, and I can't get any until March 9th or 13th,
Yeah.
And even then, obviously, guys aren't going to be suited up. But I need those answers to think. And then if Monken really is this innovator, if Monken really is going to instantly, put in some principles and some flexibility and maximize some guys. I mean, I don't know how you more maximize Harold Fannin as a 21-year-old rookie than they did. They just threw him the ball too much.
Yeah.
Well, Harold Fannin's player comp was Isaiah Likely in Baltimore. Yeah. And Isaiah did not have a great year this year because he was not healthy at the start of it. Harold's probably better, but that's the model. Small school tight end. They took a chance on. He developed. Likely he's going to hit free agency, and he's going to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And Harold Fannin might make more. Now, they had a 1-2 combo there. Njoku's not going to be on this team anymore.
Right.
But like Harold Fannin on this team could really take off. If they have Quinshon Judkins, get him some blocking, get him a scheme that works. Like, let that guy carry the offense. I don't think he's Nick Chubb. I don't think he's Derrick Henry. I don't think he's in the galaxy of those guys. Do we think he's pretty good? Right? You mix him with the defense and a little bit of competence from quarterback. Are you on to something? Sure. So that's what it comes down to, is when they wanted an older head coach and that all makes sense. But you fired the guy who was and so the insinuation is that A, Kevin was scapegoated, and B, that they just didn't think that Kevin and his combination of rotating offensive coordinators and terrible wide receivers were good enough. Well, in the personnel part, they were right. We're going to find out on the coaching side.
Let's talk about the defense now. The whole process was that there was pressure to keep Jim Schwartz. The second Jim Schwartz wasn't hired, we heard Jim Schwartz had made it clear he didn't want to be with the team if they didn't make him the head coach. Mm-hmm. What's the disconnect here, and is there any chance that Jimmy can throw enough money at him to keep him?
Well, I think the disconnect is obvious. I think what's come out was both predictable, and I think it's just the human reaction. Yeah. You're up for a job, Bull. You're going to be disappointed if you don't get it, especially if it's in the company you've already been in for 3 years, and you're that company's best hire.
Right.
So I'm not closing the door. He is under contract, and these things do get settled in some way or another, but he knows he will have outside interest, and he has made up his mind. I think people who know him well are zero surprised by this reaction. Like, what could the Browns have done differently? Not give him a second interview? I don't know. And I hate to do this because words get said and things get said. But remember that Monday, Jimmy talked 45 minutes after they officially fired Kevin, right? And Jim Schwartz was brought up. And Jimmy's reaction that day said there was no way they were considering Jim Schwartz for head coach. Do you remember that? Like there was no indication there.
Yeah.
So, like I said, is that the fairest way? But no, when that's our only way to perceive it. And so you look at the construction of this thing. If you were going older, if you did value experience, that made sense on some level. If you ended up not getting one of these young hot shots. So to hire an older head coach who wasn't Jim Schwartz, I get that. I get that line of thought, and we'll see. I do think there is some chance he'll be back. I can't put a real percentage on it, but my gut says it's not real high.
So if that's the case, obviously you have to now hire 3 coordinators, obviously, including special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there'll be names we know, or kind of, I mean, most of the teams have filled their spots already?
Yeah, no, I think defensively will be a name because there's been so many jobs open, and because guys have done this, because Todd Monken has worked in the league.
Right.
I think offensively, I think there's a chance it is one of these young guys that you pluck from another team's staff and take your chance that way. I think Monken probably will call the plays. I don't know that. I look forward to hearing his thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I look forward to a coach actually answering questions at the podium.
Yeah, that's for one. Yeah.
In special teams, I don't know. These guys come and go. And Bubba was a good coach for a long time, and Bubba was not a very good coach the last couple of years. And some of that falls on Bubba, and some of that falls on the 7 undrafted rookies that were playing on every special team.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's fair.
So, and the fact that, like in Tennessee, like the guy ran and blocked the punt, and the Browns player watched him run by him. Is that coaching? Well, sure, it falls on you when it happens that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're going to get a mix of names that George Warhop was here before. That's how this goes.
Yeah.
But I think there will be an intentional influx of young people on the offensive side. On the defensive side, it depends. If Schwartz stays, nearly the whole defensive staff will be back. If Schwartz does not stay, then almost the whole defensive staff will be new. I think they'll try to keep 1 or 2 guys. But the bigger thing to me, let me make sure that I say this. Schwartz is great, right?
Yeah.
He's not irreplaceable.
Sure.
The big thing is he had input on personnel, and he was so good that personnel naturally was made for that defense. So this is the defense that Malik Collins thrives in, right? This is the defense that Devin Bush had his best year in. He's sitting on a big free agent contract, and that's a big decision for the Browns.
Yep.
Ronnie Hickman's been a starting safety for 1.5 or 2 years, right? You have to make a decision on his contract. You traded for Tyson Campbell because he was a Jim Schwartz type of corner. Isaiah McGuire's up in a year. Like all of these things. They found Aiden Huntington. They acted like he was the next John Randall last August, right? Well, that was with Jim Schwartz. We'll see how. Mike Hall, what a terrible draft pick.
Yeah,
right. But like he's for that style of defense. So that the personnel fallout, and then what Miles thinks are obviously the 2 biggest things.
Yeah, and we know Miles posted that Instagram post, but
yeah,
obviously he's not going anywhere. But you don't make anything of it.
I don't know what to make of it. So I tend to not make anything of it, mostly because Miles said all these things last year and then lived up to none of them.
Right. That's true.
And because Miles is nearly untradeable because of the fallout, because of what happened last year. So I make very little of it, but I don't totally close the door on Miles making more of it because he's done it before.
Yeah. Clearly he has a good relationship with Jim Schwartz, and I don't think that was a shot at Todd Monken. I think it was more just a shot at, coach is
that's how I read it too. But man, I get tired even thinking about reading into these Instagram posts.
That's true.
Miles knew exactly what he was doing, right? So,
do you expect the Browns to be active? I know there's cap issues, but they're gonna kick the can down the road again and create some cap space. Mm-hmm. How active do you expect them to be in terms of trades and free agency?
Well, the best thing that they've done is move cap space to the future. Like that's what they're always doing.
Yeah.
And when they renegotiate Watson or restructure Watson, excuse me, there is a slight difference there between those two.
Yeah.
To keep him on the team and prolong the misery of everyone involved. They will have enough room to make, because they will also post June 1 a couple of these offensive linemen that are going out the door. So they will have room. I think the trade route is somewhere between likely and necessary on the wide receiver front. I think on the offensive tackle front, it almost has to be the draft where you get starters, you could get bodies. Right. And then free agency for guard, for center, for a veteran third corner, for a blocking tight end.
Yeah.
You know, and then there is the possibility of trading for Mac Jones. I don't think it's a likelihood.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a scenario you have to explore, simply from the realm of you have to explore every quarterback possibility here, right? And there's going to be a market. There's going to be a high asking price, but he comes with no price tag and basically a 1-year flyer to where you could get him, or and let me be clear, I'm not saying the Browns will do this, but some team will acquire Mac Jones for a pick between high 30s and high 50s.
Wow.
Yes. And, you know, give him a sweetener on a short-term contract, you know, to make him happy and pay him a little like a starter, but not be fully committed, not be, if it flops like Justin Fields did, $30 million in dead money. Right. Now, I'm not ruling out Malik Willis. I do think Malik Willis played himself into a larger guarantee than some teams are going to be able to do. And so with the Browns, is Devin Bush staying, and what does he command? Mm-hmm. What realistically is available in terms of veteran offensive linemen versus what they need, because they're returning very little.
Yeah.
You know, and where is this money going? You know, I don't think like AJ Brown is realistic for the Browns. You know, there's the diva, even outside of the diva stuff, or why would Philly want to move on? It's just, I think it's more of a buy much lower situation on a guy who's probably like your number 2.5, you know, and then can be a good tutor to one of the rookies you're going to bring in, with the first round pick. So, you know, the big talking point once this coaching stuff is settled is going to be receiver versus offensive tackle at number 6 versus other options, right? And then of course the layers to that are Mac Jones versus other options. You know, okay, do you like Ty Simpson or Garrett Nussmeier? Great. How early are you willing to take them? Because in this quarterback market, they're both going to go higher than they probably should. And if you hit, you're right, and it doesn't matter. But if you miss,
it's a disaster. Speaking of Garrett Nussmeier, he was at the Senior Bowl.
You
were at the Senior Bowl. I know we talked to you on UCSS earlier in the week. He was the guy you had your eye on and you were curious about. So what did you see from him this week?
Yeah, you didn't see a ton. I mean, he hadn't played football since early November, right? And he just recently, in the last 2 weeks, found out he would be cleared to participate in this. So he had a nightmare of a year. He didn't play well. He turned the ball over. The line wasn't good. He had an injury that he dealt with in camp that probably had him not ready, and then he ended up getting injured in the process of basically losing his job anyway, because LSU had a nightmare year, and his poor play wasn't part of that. But what you always liked, what teams always liked about Garrett Nussmeier is his background. His dad is the offensive coordinator of the Saints. You know, he has grown up with football. He went to LSU and waited his turn. He got beat out by a guy named Jaden Daniels, who was pretty good. Mm-hmm. He came in, he played well. There's nothing spectacular about like his athleticism or his size or anything. He's 6'1", 202, but he throws a good ball. He clearly, you know, the mental side and being a quarterback and handling all that is what he's done his entire life. And he makes NFL throws. So do you want Mac Jones, or do you want the 4 years younger version of Mac Jones? Right. And that's kind of what you're judging in Garrett Nussmeier. You know, Dane Brugler, the Athletics NFL draft guru, maintained last year that if Nussmeier had come out, that he would have been the second quarterback off the board. And that means he would have been a late first round pick. So no one thinks this year that he's going to be, but it's early in the process.
Right.
And like this, you know, this is a guy that there is a lot to like, but he's probably not like that breakthrough guy. And so again, I think some of it is just reeling yourself back in. If Josh Allen and Lamar were available every year, then teams would fall over themselves to get them. Yeah. Right. Instead, you end up with these guys and you got to try to develop them and go. And like, I've been wrong before, Bull, but here's one thing that I don't get when I get pushback on. When I say that the Browns realistically can't think of Watson as anything other than the disaster that he's been, even if he has to play this, like, what's wrong with thinking that you have to get a middle round quarterback or a second round quarterback this year to throw in the mix? You're not making the big commitment that takes you out of 27.
Right. That's
Watson
true.
has done nothing but embarrass you and been hurt. Right. And Shador is your ticket to getting out of this, but he's not anywhere close to a sure thing. He's not close to a semi-sure thing.
Right.
So like, I think the most sensible thought is around that second round area and into the third, like you have to be looking to be in the quarterback business. Unless you're in the Mac Jones business, which seems unlikely.
I think that makes a lot of sense the more you talk about it, and then forget Watson, have a true quarterback competition, two guys, Sanders and whoever you draft. Get rid of Dylan Gabriel. Get him out.
Yeah, I don't even think competition, Bull. I think it's Shador's job until he loses.
Okay. All right, fine. Yeah.
But however, look, it really is always competition.
Yeah.
Right. But you say like, hey, this year we are going to play two 24-ish-year-old quarterbacks.
Yeah. Right.
And that way, if we hit and our defense is great and Todd Monken is the guy that we wanted him to be, then we are going to be a competitive team and we are going to be on our way because we addressed offensive tackle and addressed wide receiver and gave Shador and whoever it is a chance. And if they both flop, then you're in it next year.
Right. Yeah. That does make a lot of sense. To me, that makes more sense than going after a Mac Jones, I think. Last thing.
Yeah, the cost, but just let me say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
The cost is really not that much because Mac Jones is on a minimum contract. So even when you get him and sweeten it or extend it, in which the Browns would do both because they would just push money forward, which is what they do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're paying the pick there for Mac Jones, but you're not paying real quarterback money.
No, that's true.
And last year, like the reason they went with Pickett and Flacco is they weren't paying anywhere near quarterback money.
Right.
Those guys were making nothing.
Yeah,
by quarterback standards.
Yeah.
Makes
sense. Last thing from the what else from the Senior Bowl maybe stood out to you?
The big story is this Tyron Montgomery, the Division III wide receiver from here in Cleveland, John Carroll. Yeah. He was an awesome story.
That's amazing. Really,
cool. I think he probably will get picked on the third day, and it's an amazing story. So there was a good wide receiver group there.
Yeah.
Now again, the big debate's going to be at the top. But if you do wait on wide receiver, or you do need to draft two wide receivers, in that pick 40 to 100 range, there are going to be guys who can help you for sure. So, and then I was watching the offensive tackles. Not that I'm any sort of offensive line scout, but those are the guys I want to get to know.
Right?
Who can move inside the guard? Who can play right tackle for a year and then move to left? Who's a true left? Because those are the hardest to find. And again, if you do draft a wide receiver at 6, or you do make another move, is there a guy you can get in that middle round range and develop and become a starting tackle for you down the road? So, we know DeJuan Jones is only under contract for one more season. We know KT Levison's a backup. Yeah. So they're pretty much starting from scratch there. Yeah. So that's the group of guys that I was looking at. And I do think, just from talking to people, the defensive line in this draft is the class of the draft and is going to be the hot group. So that's why the Senior Bowl was important, because every opportunity for these tackles to go against this group was a great evaluation point. And this is the last football part of the entire evaluation. It's all in shorts and T-shirts after this.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned 40 to 100. The Browns haven't had much luck with wide receivers or offensive linemen they haven't had much luck with those positions at any spot.
Sure.
But they've drafted a lot of wide receivers between 40 and 100. They've all been terrible, but
hopefully
it'll be better.
People don't want to hear this, Bull.
Yeah.
But if these defensive linemen and Caleb Downs are as great as everybody says, then you trade out of 6, you add another pick in the second round, and you add something for next year.
Yeah.
And you go that way. The Browns are going to have 4 of the top 70 again. They have 10 picks overall. They're going to have flexibility to add good young players, and they need them. And when you look at that top 70, it probably has to be 4 offensive players. If it's not 4 offensive players, it's a defensive player you love so much that you didn't think you could turn down.
Right.
As it stands right now, it's wide receiver or offensive tackle at 6, and it's wide receiver or offensive tackle way above the other options at 24.
All right. Well, there'll be plenty of time to get into that when we get closer.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Zach, thanks as always, man. I'll talk to you again soon.
All right, we'll see ya.
There you go. Zac Jackson from The Athletic. Always great to chat with him in the bullpen. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And make sure you download the Bet Rivers app. We've got you covered for all your gambling needs. So check out the Bet Rivers app or go to betrivers.com. I'll be back in the bullpen on Tuesday. Dustin will join me at 9 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday next week. And we may have another show or two with some guests. We'll let you know. But Tuesday and Thursday, definitely live at 9 a.m. with me and Dustin. Thanks to Levi, Z, and Ernie, all for producing today. And thanks again to all of you. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.